Sea of Red, it's time for another Fireside Chat, the official podcast of Flames fans. It's go time.
After two tough losses, the Calgary Flames have fallen out of a Western Conference Wildcard spot. I'm Dan alongside Matt, and we'll break that down and more. Matt, rotten week for the Flames, huh?
Yeah, and it's not looking to be any easier with virtual murderer's row coming up for this team, so tough times ahead.
The Flames played 2 games this week, got 2 losses. Technically, they got 1 point out of the 2 losses because of a shootout loss, but arguably the first game this week, one they needed to win. Let's talk about that. The Flames had 3 days off. They played Montreal last Saturday, had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off, took on the Canucks here at the Dome. There's a team that's been, right around the Flames for that last Western Conference wildcard spot. So you really had to get that win, and the Flames dropped it 4-3 in a shootout. I'll hear your thoughts on this one first.
Well, the Flames played a very good first 40 minutes, and I felt that it was very much feeling like a playoff level atmosphere where the Flames were engaging the Canucks very physically. If they had a little bit more finish, they probably would have been up more than they were heading into the third period. And then the wheels kind of fell off the wagon in the third period, where at one point the Flames were outshot 17-1 in the third and just had no answer whatsoever, and basically flushed their excellent first 40 minutes down the toilet and allowed the team that they're fighting with to make up 3 points, basically, from denying us 1 and getting 2 themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. I thought the Flames had a good first 2 periods, maybe 1.5 periods. But yeah, they needed more finish. They needed to, take more advantage of some of the opportunities they got, I thought. And yeah, that third period, they just let Vancouver back into this. And if they wouldn't have, I believe the Flames would have won this one.
Yeah, and it's one of those where, I do understand needing to go into a defensive shell a bit. But, there's going into a defensive shell and then, you're not skating at all. And, it felt inevitable from about the 8-minute mark in the third period until Pettersson tied it that Vancouver was eventually going to score, because it was basically in our zone the entire period. And, there is only so much that Dustin Wolf can do. And, he's one guy, he needs help out there, and even on the goal, he did make the first save, and nobody was there to clear the rebound. And, it's just tough for a guy like Wolf who's doing his best, and, the team just kind of collapses in front of him.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Of note as well in this game, Connor Zary, at 11:19 in the first, he got a minor penalty for interference after, elbowing Elias Pettersson. Yeah,
and the defenseman version, not the forward version.
We have to qualify that. Yeah, there's 2 guys with pretty much the same name. It reminds me. Do you remember that meme in when the Flames traded with Vancouver for Granlund, and they said, "What? There's 2 Granlunds?"
Yes, exactly.
Same kind of idea, but
not the good one.
Exactly the
defenseman.
There you go. And it cost Zary 2 games. So he sat out the Colorado game, and he also sat out the upcoming Toronto game. So the Flames without one of their core pieces there.
And to be fair, that was a very selfish play by Zary. Yes, Pettersson did hit Kadri, but you don't go skating up to somebody, elbows flying into their head, and give them a concussion. You have to be smarter than that. And, especially in a playoff race, you being out there is more important than a temporary retribution. Take the guy's number, and if you can hit him later on, do so. But you don't, clock the guy for no real reason.
Yeah, and it's not like those two have any heat in the past that I can remember or anything like that.
No, and frankly, to me, 2 games was actually a little bit light based off of like other players who have done that, and Zary's fortunate that he doesn't have a suspension history. Otherwise, that probably would have been a 4 or 5 game suspension.
Now his suspension history.
Yes.
No, I agree with you, though. I think it was a selfish play. It wasn't needed. It wasn't something Zary had to do. It didn't really give the Flames much, if any, benefit to doing it. And I think it was just a mental breakdown. Too bad that it happened. Too bad that, they did have that mental breakdown, because I think, really miss Zary the next game and will continue to miss him. But, yeah, just not something you can be doing.
No.
Especially in regular season play. The next game, the Colorado Avalanche, the new look Colorado Avalanche, we should say, came to Calgary.
Yeah, I heard a fun stat. They've used like 47 different players this season.
Wow.
That's like over 2 full teams rosters.
Well, yeah, because if you remember, they had a lot of guys hurt at the beginning of the year, so much so they were putting Shillington as a forward.
Yeah, and they just kept cycling through. Like, both goalies are different, and yeah,
so
just weird.
If you're in their minor league system, if you're playing for, who are they, Hershey or Colorado, whoever their AHL team is, you've got a good. If you didn't get called up, it probably says something about where you are in the organization.
Yes, exactly.
There's probably one guy in the dressing room who never got the call, and he's still waiting for it.
Just the single tear rolling down his cheek.
That's right.
Nobody loves me.
But anyway, the Colorado Avalanche came in, and they showed that they don't love the Flames with a 4-2 win over the Calgary Flames. Close game in terms of shots, 28 for Colorado, 24 for the Flames. But Colorado went on, obviously, on a big win here, extending their point streak to 8 with this win, and Calgary's now lost 6 of their last 8 after this one. To me, this just looked like what it was. It looked like a good team playing a not-so-good team.
And to be fair, this was an easy first 40 minutes for the Avalanche. Calgary, I think at the midway point of the game, only had a total of 3 shots. Which you can't win a hockey game getting 3 shots in the first 30 minutes. That'd be somewhat poor if you're playing soccer, let alone, hockey. And, it's tough when you have a team that's playing well and, you don't show up for half of the game. And to the Flames' credit, they did try to come back in the third period. They got within 1, then they immediately gave the goal back, and then a goal late when there wasn't enough time to actually push for the equalizer, and an empty netter right after the goalie was pulled, and there's your 4-2 final. And again, this was a squandered opportunity by the Flames, where if they had actually started when the game started, they might have actually got a point out of this game. But you can't play 30 minutes and expect to actually get a point.
Yep. No, I think it's. I think it just showed that Calgary, as much as we're excited by a lot of what they've done this year, when you see them take on a good team like this, I think it really showed who the Flames are.
Yeah, and realistically, the Flames offensively are the worst team in the NHL, and the only time that they actually do win games is when they are giving it their all for the full 60 minutes, and very rarely have they actually managed to get points in games where they didn't play at least 55 minutes of the game. And when you're in a playoff hunt, you need to find a way to elevate your game to get points. And now, not only do they find themselves behind Vancouver, but St. Louis is now tied with them, and they're winning in their game that they're playing tonight. And Utah's not very far off of the Flames either. They're only 2 points back, and they're in action against Vancouver as well. So, the Flames now actually are only 3 points up on the 10th overall pick, and only 2 points up on the 11th. So, it's not very far.
2 games against Western Conference opponents you really had to, win this week and didn't.
No, and if they don't turn it around quickly, like it's not going to take very much for them to fall right down the standings, and especially with the Murderers Row coming up this week, they're going to have to be giving it full 60-minute efforts to make up for this week's poor play.
Yeah, you were starting to talk about some of the teams around the Flames, so let's look at that. So in the Pacific, the Pacific Division, the Flames are fourth. It's the Vegas Golden Knights.
Fifth now.
Fifth. Yeah. The Vegas Golden Knights at 86 points, LA at 81, Edmonton at 80, Vancouver at 73, Calgary at 71. That puts Calgary also outside the Western Conference Wildcard, with Minnesota at 79 and Vancouver at 73, holding that down. Calgary has 71 points after 65 games, 30 wins, 24 losses, 11 overtime losses. St. Louis also at 71, and then Utah at 69, right behind the Flames. Like you said, there's really not a lot of margin for error here, and you may not be able to get your own business done. I mean, looking at how this is shaking down, this may be you have to win and other teams have to lose in order for you to get in.
Well, then you look at quality of competition, and basically Vancouver and Calgary's schedules remaining are virtually the same in terms, like, we play mostly the same teams, and even when we're not, it's like similar caliber teams that we're going up against. But St. Louis literally has the easiest record of games left remaining in the season. Like they are literally 32nd for like strength of competition, and like I can virtually guarantee that St. Louis is going to make the playoffs because they're basically playing nothing but bottom feeders the rest of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, Calgary's got a tough schedule. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we get to preview this next week. But the Flames are really going to have to find a way to win, especially with, as we talked about, Zary out and also their captain out. On Friday morning, it was announced that the captain, Mikael Backlund, is going to be out week to week with an upper body injury. The Flames brought up Dryden Hunt from the American Hockey League to fill in there, but not only do you not want your captain out, Matt, the Flames can't afford to lose any centermen.
No, and having Zary, who's a potential center replacement for Backlund, getting suspended also hurts the Flames' efforts. And realistically, with Backlund being week to week, usually that means like a month, give or take. There's not very much time between now and the end of the regular season, so like that might be a close to season-ending injury for Backlund. The Flames do find themselves in the playoffs. He might be getting ready for like game one type of thing, and it's going to be difficult for this team, who's already very thin at the center position, to be able to fill those minutes that he does play defensively.
Yeah, we saw Sharon Govich step in as that centerman for the Colorado game. We had Kadri, Sharon Govich, Frost, and Rooney as the centers. Obviously, as we talked about, Dryden Hunt recalled, as well Adam Klapka already on the roster. But yeah, this is going to be a tough one for the Flames. It's going to be tough for the team to. It's going to be tough for the team to be able to, I think, make the forward progress they need to make while they are struggling the way that they're struggling.
And then you look
guys out with them not being able to play the way they are. I think this injury by itself could be one of those things we look back at and go, yeah, that's when the wheels fell off.
Yeah, well, and then you look at like the week upcoming, like they got the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are one of the league's elite, New Jersey, who's on a roll, the New York Rangers, who are fighting for a playoff spot, and the New York Islanders, who are also fighting for a playoff spot. And we're playing those 4 games on the road in like 5 or 6 days. And, it's not going to be easy for the Flames to, because like they play on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So in 6 days, they play 4 games. Like that's a lot of hockey against 4 really good teams. It's not going to be easy, especially with how they played the last 2.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm worried right now. Like with like I said, I think this might be something we look at when we look back and say, where did the Flames fall apart? I think this might be the place. Now, we will have Zary coming back after the first game there. I could see Zary potentially slot in as a centerman. But, yeah, I mean, this team without those two is pretty thin.
Yeah, and and then looking even further ahead, like, it doesn't really get much easier. Like, there's one somewhat easy game against Seattle, but then they finish out the month with Dallas, Edmonton, and Colorado. So, like, frankly, like, 7 of the 8 games remaining in March are against really good teams or teams fighting for a playoff spot. And, like, Calgary needs to find a way to elevate their game. And, like, they had 2 great opportunities to do so this week and failed the test both times. So hopefully they can find another gear at some point. But, things get pretty bleak pretty quickly if things don't turn around quick.
I'm not going to make any predictions here because I think it's too early to do so, but I think this is another sign that if the Flames are going to find a way to add on the forward side, I mean, they really don't have any free roster spots, but if they're going to go free agent shopping or make a trade to the draft, they need to find a way to bring in a centerman because, like, the fact that we don't even have an extra centerman we can stick in there is worrisome.
Yeah, and, like, organizationally, like, even the players that we just drafted this past draft, like, none of them are surefire NHL centers either, and, like, organizationally we just don't have any right now. And like, I'm kind of expecting like 2 or 3 or 4 of the 4 picks that the Flames have in the top 3 rounds will be used on centers. Like, they're gonna need to find a lot of, much like how last year they were able to address the lack of D in the system and at the NHL level and in the prospect pool coming up. They really need to spend, like, the entire offseason addressing the center position any way they can at all levels.
Yeah, I think, it's going to be important definitely to draft, like you said, but I think you need some pro guys as well. And you're going to need to, find that guy, whether that's, an off-season free agent signing or a draft day deal, whatever it might be. They need NHL centermen,
badly.
ready to go.
Yeah, badly. As much as, like, guys like Kirkland coming up earlier this year helped at the time, they got hurt too. So, and kind of running out of options to throw up the middle where we're converting wingers to center just because, hey, you're a body. Woo. And that's not a good place to start with.
And you also don't want to rush guys from the farm into that position just because you need centermen. Like, I think right now converting guys is probably the best choice because you don't want to, the Wranglers are struggling a bit and you don't want to, I think, bring guys up there and put them too deep too quick. But, I mean, it's, even if we look at the Wranglers roster, it's there's not a ton of centers here.
No, and like, that to me is like priority number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Frankly, for the off season, is addressing the centers at all levels in the organization, and not just in the NHL. But, like, I would even be targeting like college free agents and European free agents as well, just to bolster some organizational depth.
We'll talk about college free agents in a sec here, but if we look at the centermen on the Wranglers roster, like Clark Bishop, we've tried. It didn't really work outside of a fourth line role. David Silje, not the guy to bring up. I don't think Honzig is the answer. Sam Morton's not the answer. So, unless you bring up a guy like Martin Ferk or something, who is really a winger, there's not a lot of options there.
No, and like, you could bring back Honzig, but, like, at that rate, like, you're kind of rushing his development, and that's not good for him or the team. And same with Morton. Like, I feel like he needs to get the full season before he can actually push for a spot next year.
Yeah. And Rory Kearns is both a center and a winger, but again, they've tried that. I think we saw what he had, and I'm not sure that's the answer right now.
Yeah. I know, and the Flames are just in a tough spot, and then, like, if anybody else gets hurt, which could happen at literally any given moment. You know, like the Flames, like if they lost Kadri, like you might as well just pack it in.
Well, yeah, I was about to say that. Like if there's any other guy, I would say, you know, pretty much any. I think we could weather a bottom 2 defenseman going down, but if pretty much anyone on the top 9 forwards, or let's call them the top 3 defensemen, goes down, this team's gonna have a big hole with no way to fill it.
Yeah, and like you can literally pack it in for the year at that point. Like
yeah. I mean, we saw Ball already go down, but if Uyghur or Anderson goes down again, you're screwed. If you've got Huberdeau, Kadri, Coronado, Coleman, Sharangovich, Farabee, Frost, or, you know, I think those guys, you're done.
Yeah. Not going to be easy for this team. And
no, it's not. If they're going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to work for this.
Yeah. Well, and with the edges being so thin, like they could fall right into the top 10 of the draft just as easily. And
yeah,
it does not take much right at this point to go either way. Like we're 2 points up or behind Vancouver. We're 2 points up on the 11th overall pick. Like things can fall apart really quickly, or rebound if they do so. But like today is basically D-Day for them, and like they cannot mess around anymore. Like they need points. Like realistically, they need 6 out of the 8 points on this road trip if they want to still be a part of the playoff discussion, and that's going to be a hell of a tall order.
Like Samuel L. Jackson's character, I don't even know if he had a name set in Jurassic Park. Hold on to your butts.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be quite the ride over the next couple weeks here for the Flames. You were mentioning college free agents. The NCAA season is wrapping up. Each of the different conferences is finishing off their seasons and their playoffs, and we're getting to that time of year now where college free agents will be signing NHL deals. And Frank Saravelli has pointed to 3 guys that might be interested in the Flames. The Flames are, I guess, poking around at. So just thought I'd preview these guys here so fans have some idea of who they might be. Last year, Sam Morton was that big free agent they signed. Dave Celia as well, but he's not as impressive as Morton has been. But the Flames have a history of bringing in these college free agents. So the first one is actually a Calgary boy, Carter King. Played for Lake Bonavista here in Calgary as a kid. He may be the king of the undrafted class for 2025, a 2-time NCAA national champion at Denver. That's University of Denver. He's also their captain. What he lacks in size, he's only 5'10". He makes up for in character and class. He's a consistent scorer, setting a new career high in goals this year in 18. He's also been nominated for his conference's Defensive Forward of the Year. It sounds like the Flames are one team interested. There's been a lot of them, but I'm kind of hoping that at 23 and being a Calgary boy, you might want to come here and not, kind of fart around and go somewhere else, only to... Often we see these kind of players find their way back to a rebuilding organization at some point.
Yeah.
He's a left shot forward. He plays center for Denver. Again, I don't think a guy that you're looking at on your NHL roster next year by any means, but another good center for the American League roster.
Yeah, very much in the same mold as Morton, probably a little bit more on the defensive side than the offensive side, but the Flames need a good defensive center who can win faceoffs, and he's very good at that.
And the fact he's a Calgary boy, I'm hoping he'd want to come home.
I agree.
When the team you say, yeah, we'd love to sign you, you're a Calgary boy, we'll send you to Stockton, there's probably not as much, interest in that. But when, hey, you're a Calgary boy, you'll still play here no matter which roster you're on, unless you're bad enough to go to Rapid City.
Oh.
The next guy is a Colorado college player, so the other Colorado institution from New Jersey. He's 21-year-old Gleb Veremyev. He actually attended the Flames development camp in 2022. He's a junior. He's had a really good offensive season with 28 points in 37 games. He took a bit of a slide this year from where he was last year. Last year he had 28 points in 37 games. This year he slid back a little bit with 16 points in 34 games. He's 6'4", 205 pounds. You can understand why the Flames be interested in him. We've seen big guys work out. I mean, Keenan Kanzig comes to mind of guys that didn't. right? But again, another centerman that if you can just get him in the system, it can't hurt to bring that guy in.
No, and realistically, outside of making trades at the deadline like they did last year, adding like a D-man with every trade, signing college free agent centers is a good way to get some competition on the Wranglers moving forward in the center ranks, to have some legit pro players, because like from the drafted guys, like the Flames don't really have anybody coming up either. So kind of like backfilling while you wait for the players that you're soon likely to draft as they get ready to turn pro in a couple of years.
Yeah, and even if, let's say, Honzig were to make the team next year, I'm not saying he will or won't, I don't know, but let's just say that he does, you need somebody else to take that spot, and the Flames want the Wranglers to be competitive, so you need somebody to take that spot and be able to, play in that role and be able to play competitively at the AHL level. Now, the nice thing about bringing these guys in now is they can join your team for the AHL playoffs, so at least they get some taste of that. And the third guy that Saravelli thinks the Flames might be interested in is the brother of Adam Prokop, John Prokop of Union College. He's from Washington. He's a defenseman. He actually attended the Flames dev camp in 2023. He has 26 points in 34 games. He's 6'3" and 190 pounds. And again, I think that the Flames will have probably one of their AHL defensemen. I can't see two, but I think one of their AHL defensemen probably go to the NHL next year. I think they'll call up one of them. So just a body to replace them is a great idea.
Yep.
So all of these guys are older, right? 21 and then two 23-year-olds. So, not your 18-year-old stud, but that's also why you're a college free agent. But, we've seen some of them turn out really well. We've seen some of them not turn out so well. Good for the Flames to give them a chance, because much as we put emphasis on the draft and everybody likes the pageantry of the draft, you can find some good players as free agents. I mean, our former captain, Mark Giordano, free agent that signed with the team, right? So I think that you've got to remember that the acquisition of new players is multifaceted. It's the draft, it's trades, it's also just college free agents, European free agents. Like you said earlier, the Flames haven't had the best record with European free agents, but at least not lately. But, you've just got to look everywhere. And I think Sens fans don't give these kind of moves, if they do happen, the appreciation they need, because they're not sexy. And it's I think as valid as anything. Some of these guys are going to be just as good as your 5th, 6th, 7th round picks that you might have. So you've got, the more you can get an asset for nothing, the more you've got to take advantage of that.
Oh, for sure. And like we've seen the competition amongst the young D-men with the Wranglers since the start of this year. From all the guys that the Flames acquired last year at the trade deadline, guys like Grushnikov, Bruce Davich, and everybody else, that has helped the organization and be able to push everything forward. The competition at the farm level, so you're seeing guys like Soloviev and Kuznetsov elevate their game to the point where they got recalled at various points this year. And, like those guys might graduate so that the next group, the Grushnikovs, etc., get more of an opportunity next year, and start to actually cycle through. And, like, the Flames are kind of in this mode of needing some bodies in order to start that cycle. And, like, right now we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, and when you're bringing in older guys, 21, 22, 23, I mean, you're going to sign these guys to probably 1 or 2 year deals. So even if they don't work out, it's not like you're stuck with that guy. You can easily let him walk after that if you want to. So no harm in trying. You've got the 50 contracts for a reason. But yeah, I think I haven't seen any of these guys play, but just reading about them and their stats, can't hurt to give it a shot, right? Even if you got to stick some of them in Rapid City next year to work on that game, that's okay too.
Exactly. And realistically, like, the Flames are going to need to find some alternates and get some luck, frankly, from some of these guys turning into actual NHL players for them if they're wanting to not completely bottom out moving forward and are wanting to kind of retool on the fly. They need people to work, and the only way you can do that is kind of throw as many darts at the board as possible and hope that you blindly hit a bullseye now and then.
That's all you can do, yep. Well, let's shift focus a little bit. Let's talk more about the guy who doesn't get enough coverage here in town. I say that sarcastically. Dustin Wolf, the guy who obviously has been on everyone's lips all year, whether they're howling when he saves or talking about his great play. We talked about him early in the year as being a Calder Trophy contender. For those that don't know, that's the award, as the NHL defines it, given to the player selected most proficient in his first year of competition in the NHL. And there's been some names that I think are topping that list. I'd say Matvei Michkov, number one. But lately I'm hearing a lot more people talking outside of the Calgary market about Dustin Wolf. And I think traditionally the Eastern players get a little bit more maybe FaceTime with the media. Lane Hudson I've been hearing talking about. Matt, right now, and maybe it's just my Calgary bias, I see no reason that this should not be Dustin Wolf.
Frankly, looking at the team, I saw one stat where if you look at the bottom ranked offense, usually that team finishes dead last in the NHL or second last, with only a couple of exceptions, and usually those teams have an exceptional goaltender. And this is heading back 15, 20 years. Calgary is the worst offensive team in the NHL, and yet they're right in the thick of a playoff hunt because of one man. And to me, he's one of the 5 best goalies in the NHL, possibly even a top 3 goalie in the NHL this season. And the Flames would be down with the likes of Chicago if it wasn't for the stellar play of Dustin Wolf.
Yeah, and while Michkov is fun to watch, I mean, his team is in the basement of the East, right? He really hasn't done anything to impact his team like Dustin Wolf has.
No, and same with Macklin Celebrini. He's a very good player as well, right up in that same discussion with Hudson and Michkov. But to me, Wolf, what he is doing is basically the equivalent of, say, a guy like Crosby or Ovechkin putting up 100 points in a season in their rookie year. And, it's that tier of, I don't even recall a goalie coming into the league and being a top 5 goalie back to, when Brodeur came in, frankly. That's the last time I remember a goalie coming in and having that level of impact on his team. And frankly, if the Flames had any depth up front in the other 18 spots, this team would be comfortably in a playoff spot. Everybody's prognostications of this being a bottom 5 caliber team were actually spot on, save for the fact that we're getting Vezina caliber goaltending night in, night out from Dustin Wolf.
Totally agree with you. Yep. Dustin Wolf is the reason the Flames are even anywhere close to a playoff spot. And I know that nothing in the actual description says, how they've impacted their team, just most proficient in their first year. But again, for a goaltender to come in and do what Wolf has done, I think shows that he's the most proficient.
Well, then you look on top of it, the Flames have had 25 one-goal games with him in net, and he's actually won 17 of those 25. That's absolutely stellar for any goaltender, let alone a rookie.
Yep. Do you know the last goalie to win the trophy was?
Steve Mason, maybe?
Steve Mason, yep. The only guy since 2005 who's won and is not still active.
Yeah.
And
Raycroft,
before that was Raycroft in 03-04, and then Nabokov, and then Brodeur.
Yeah.
So, I think it's... And, Mason was 21, Raycroft was 23, Nabokov 25, which is the cutoff. Brodeur 21. So, even then, it's showing that a lot of these goaltenders need more years to get to that point.
Oh, for sure. And, it's just one of those things where, if Wolf had the decently talented team. Like, even if it was the Flames were just the league average, like, this team would be up with LA and Edmonton fighting for home ice, frankly, and possibly even facing against Vegas at this point. Like, the fact that we are one of the worst teams in the league and are in the hunt for a playoff spot after the trade deadline is absolutely nuts, and it's all 100% on Wolf's shoulders. And frankly, if the Flames do make the playoffs, I do not see how he does not be at least a finalist for the Hart Trophy and a finalist for the Vezina too, because he is literally
Vezina's for best goaltender in the regular season, and the Hart's for the player judge most impactful or team success in the postseason
in the regular season. And it's one of the it's one of those things where, like, the Flames have one true star player and then not very much else, and like, he is absolutely fantastic. And I think that the Calder is his at this point, barring like him imploding in the last month of the season. And if the Flames make the playoffs, he should be getting a lot of votes for the Vezina and the Hart Trophy too.
Yeah, I think definitely for like Vezina for sure. I think to do what he's done as a rookie, definitely something you need to give him. I was thinking Conn Smythe when I said the MVP of the playoffs. Yeah, you're right. Hart is MVP of the regular season. I think definitely him. I think it'll probably go to Ovechkin for the records that he's getting this year, but I think Dustin Wolf should definitely be a candidate. For the Calder Trophy, here's a crazy stat. The award's been given out 92 times. Goaltenders have won it only 13% of those. 12 goaltenders have been able to claim it. So 13% of recipients are goalies. That's crazy.
Which makes sense, because usually goalies kind of get eased into the league generally.
But also, the trophy says you have to be 25 or younger, and I think that could be why too, because a lot of good goaltenders who are coming in have had more time in the American League.
Yeah, because it's not often like you have a guy like a Patrick Waugh or Ken Dryden just getting dropped in and, I'm the best goalie in the world right off the hop, and which does happen, but only if you're Montreal and you have injuries in the last game of the season. But, it's one of those things where getting good goaltending right off the hop is very rare. Like, only a few guys that won the award actually carried on to have a good career, and guys like Tom Barrasso come to mind. But for every one of them, you get a Steve Mason, an Andrew Raycroft, or a Jim Carey, who were good for a hot minute and then faded off into obscurity.
I forgot about Jim Carey.
Yep.
Washington goaltender. I wonder whatever happened to him.
I think he became a real estate agent, if I recall correctly.
Okay. According to Wikipedia, he is the president and CEO of Optimed Billing Solutions, a medical billing company based out of Boston.
Okay. There you go.
Good for him. I mean, but even that's cool. We don't see a lot of NHL players go on to be CEOs of anything. So good for him. And I hope that, because a lot of the voters for this are in the East and try to pick who they've seen in the East, that the Flames have in their Eastern swing this week, at least you might get Wolf some more FaceTime with some of those voters. And I think that's going to be one good thing about this week.
Yep.
Let's talk about this coming week, shall we?
No, don't really want to.
You and I both were wrong last week. I thought we'd win them both. You thought we'd win Vancouver, lose Colorado. Technically, you were closer because we got a point against Vancouver, but neither of us won.
Was looking good for the first 40 minutes, and then everything kind of went downhill fast.
The Flames have a 4-game Eastern road trip. They, as we know, played their last game here on Friday. Did not play on Hockey Night in Canada. That's the first Saturday I can remember that they haven't had a game. It's not often you don't play a game on Saturday, but the Flames off on a road trip. These are going to be all early games for Flames fans because of the time difference. But Monday, the Flames take on the Toronto Maple Leafs, 5:30 p.m. That's on Amazon Prime in Toronto. Then the next night they go into Manhattan to take on the Broadway Blue Shirts, the New York Rangers, 5 p.m. Mountain Time on Sportsnet. Then they get a day off, and on Thursday they'll be in New Jersey taking on the Devils, 5 p.m. And Markstrom again will be probably featured in that one, the guy that we haven't seen a lot of since he left. And then Saturday, 2 p.m. start time, the Calgary Flames take on the New York Islanders during, I guess, not hockey night in Canada, but hockey afternoon in Long Island. So 4 games on the docket this week, 4 Eastern games, which you can probably afford to give up points to these other teams, but you can't afford to not get the points.
Yeah.
This is going to be a hard one. Like last week, they had to beat Vancouver just because Vancouver's so close. As much as you wanted to beat Colorado giving them a point or two is not going to hurt. Giving all these teams because they're on the East a point doesn't matter, but we just need points. And if the Flames, I hate to say it, Matt, if the Flames go 0-4, which I can see happening, I think their playoff hopes might be dashed.
Yeah, like realistically, the worst they could do and still consider themselves alive is going 500. And realistically, the 2 games against New York teams are the only ones I can realistically see them winning. So
to go 500, you got 8 points. So they'd have to get 4 of those 8.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just say that they beat the New York Rangers, and that's it. I don't see, like, we do not play well in Long Island for whatever reason for the last handful of years. And then it being an afternoon game on top of it, I just, that gives me bad vibes. And New Jersey and Toronto are both hot right now, so yeah. The only team I can see them realistically beating is the Rangers, and even then is kind of a 50-50. So I don't see it being a good week for the Flames.
No, I don't either. I think
next week will be us kind of proclaiming that
licking our wounds.
Yeah, this is the end. And looking ahead to next year and such levels of not quite that doom and gloom, but close.
And I mean, as much as we say that, these guys still play till really another month. Like the 17th of April is their last game. But I think this is the week that really could seal their fate as either drafting in that top 10 or, still running for the playoffs. This is a tough one for me. Like, I think they can beat the Rangers if they play the way we know Calgary can play. But they're coming off 2 losses. They're going to have a loss the night before in Toronto, I think, and they never do well in a back-to-back. Nobody does. And I think that's what will probably seal their fate against the Rangers.
Yeah, like they need to somehow find a win between the 2 games. And
yeah,
I don't really know how, but yeah.
I think of the other 2, you probably have Jersey as a scheduled loss, and I think they could beat the Islanders, again, if they play their game. But the matinee aspect...
And for whatever reason, we just suck in Long Island, which makes no sense, but like over the last handful of years, I find that like we tend to lose most of the games there for whatever reason.
Yeah, and they're in UBS now. They're not in that stupid... What was that arena with the car in it?
Oh yeah,
the basketball
in Brooklyn,
Barclays. Yeah, that was the Flames did terrible there. All right, I hate to do it, Matt. I'm going 4 losses.
Welcome to the dark side of my usual predictions of we're just going to lose everything.
I don't see with the Flames where they are, and with Backlund out.
Yeah, well, and that's the hard part. Like, if Backlund was okay, like that's like 18 minutes of defensive play that you have to make up with guys that are nowhere near as good defensively as Backlund. And like, I know we've been criticizing Backlund's lack of offense over the last couple of months, but like his defensive game didn't really slide at all. And Yeah, like it's going to be tough for this team.
It is. It's we'll talk about, the next games after this, but really the Flames have tough opponents from here until the end of the season.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, like they have another 3 tough opponents before the end of the month in Dallas, Colorado, and Edmonton. And then, like, even next month, they play Vegas twice and LA once and Minnesota once.
They also, though, play Anaheim twice and the Sharks twice.
Yeah. So it's one of those where...
But if you dig yourself into a hole too much, those aren't going to matter.
Exactly.
Like, the Flames could be in a hole where those games aren't going to get you out of it by that point.
Yeah. Like, in those 8 games that they have remaining this month, like, if they don't have at least 4 wins out of that, like, the games in April are not going to matter. And with the quality of opponents that they're going to face, getting 4 wins is going to be a tall order.
It is. Where would you play Dan Vladar this week?
Probably the Toronto game. And then ride Wolf the rest of the way.
Interesting. So you play Wolf then 3 consecutive, and you play him in the second on the back-to-back.
Yep.
I can see that.
I'm just trying to think, like, what gives you the better chance of winning a game. And the Rangers game is the more easily winnable between the two. And throwing your best starter against that guy instead makes sense.
Yeah, I see that and I get that. But at the same time, with very little time between the games, I think I'd want to give Wolf the extra rest. So it'll be interesting to see what the Flames do with those. And as you said, Matt, you and I might be singing the blues next week, but I guess we'll find out when we reconvene a week from now.
As always, go Flames go.
Fireside Chat is hosted by Dan Stevenson, co-hosted by Matt DeBorg. This episode produced and edited by Peter Marino. Fireside Chat is licensed under Creative Commons license. For full license details, visit firesidechat.ca.